There are going to be days where you don't feel like doing the work. You start to make excuses, slack off a little, take your progress for granted. And not before long, your relationships, your values, your goals, they all start slipping away. That is why complacency is the silent killer for ambitious young men. And I've had to battle it myself. In fact, I've been training for a 14-kilometer run just for this event in my hometown. And my goal is to get a 5 minutes per kilometer, again for this specific circuit. And one night I ran 12 kilometers around this track around my block. It's less hilly, so it was a bit easier. But I set the goal going into it, also trying to get 5 kilometers because I'm training for this event. And I ended up beating it. I ended up getting 4 minutes 55. And most people would be happy with that. But because I knew that I could have given it more, I was disappointed. And the reason why I didn't give it my best was because I had a stitch, right? So I felt disappointed because I knew I could have done better. And that's the point, is when your standards begin to lower, that's when complacency kicks in. Part of the reason why I didn't do so well is because once I got that stitch, I started to lower my standards. I saw that I was beating my time because I was tracking it, and I took my foot off the accelerator a little bit. I started to coast when I could have pushed it a bit more. I had this stitch and I was thinking, oh man, it's pretty tough. So I slowed down a little. And then when it was time for me to push again, I didn't. So even though my fitness improved, my effort wasn't as high as it could have been. And that's why I was disappointed. The reason why we get complacent is because we stop valuing what we built. Over time, we sort of take it for granted. So for example, if you're at the gym, and for me, just a personal story, I've been training for 3.5 years now, consistently, and it's very easy for me to go to my workout and sort of, it's just like part of the routine. I do my workout, do my exercises, and then I go home. But even then, it's almost like I'm not appreciating the grind for what I was always meant to from the start. So when I started, I was thinking about building the 10 out of 10 physique, right? And that comes through overtime, consistency, putting in the effort, progressive overload, etc. And this happens to ambitious young men on the journey, but you start to slack off a little. You start to put less effort in your workouts because you've already done so many. So you think you're already good enough. You build an 8 out of 10 physique and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty happy with what I got. And maybe, again, this depends on your goals, but you set out to achieve a 10 out of 10 physique, but because you start getting that 8 out of 10 physique, now you start to take it a bit easier. And that's the problem, is you're not where you're at yet, but you're taking it easier. So that actually, it doesn't even make sense. We should be pushing ourselves harder because we're not there yet. And that's the problem with complacency. In business, you get a small win. Let's just say you're trying to make $10,000 a month, right? Let's say you get you're like doing a coaching business and you get a high ticket client, $1,000, right? You think, oh man, awesome, right? And then you start to take your foot off the accelerator. You stop putting in the effort that you did to get that client in the first place. Same with relationships. You stop being the man who attracted your girlfriend in the first place. And you see this all the time. I like even just talking to some guys, they're so focused on getting into the relationship, and because they're so hyper focused on that, once they achieve that goal, like get this girl to like me back. As soon as they do that, they stop putting in the effort that made them attractive to her in the first place. So they stop taking care of their own body. They start to eat junk food. They start to sleep in a little and stay up later being on FaceTime with her. And over time, the relationship falls apart because you as a man no longer was leading. You're no longer being the kind of man that she was attracted to. But if you took the approach where, no, I'm not going to get complacent, and you improve your communication skills over time, that's when your relationship will truly flourish. Not just from the start, when the feelings are high, but because you put a conscious effort to improve, then you are able to build that relationship. And so I had 3 pointers I wanted to talk about when it comes to when you face complacency, because as I said, I battle it too, right? With that run, with fitness, with all sorts of things. It's complacency is a very normal thing to go through, but we want to obviously counteract it as much as we can, because it can be destructive. And so my first tip would be to set higher standards. So going back to the relationship analogy, don't just try to have a relationship that works. So you're dating this girl, you think she's really awesome, and you try to marry her, right? It's very easy to get complacent once you're been in a long-term relationship. Once you sort of, know her well, you start to get a little bit more comfortable, which is natural. But again, you let yourself go as a man. You stop making decisions. You stop communicating well. But what if you had the standard of, I want this to be the best relationship that everyone else around me has ever seen modeled? Because once you have that standard, that's when you continue to push yourself to become better. Nothing pushes you more than when you have a challenging goal that you must give it your 100% best to get there. So for me, with my run, if I had a more challenging goal that day, and I said, I want to get to 4 minutes 45 instead of 4 minutes 55, I would have pushed myself a lot harder when I faced that stitch. Now, obviously, you don't want to make it too unrealistic, because obviously it's not. It gets to the point where it's not even motivating. If I said, "Oh, 4 minutes a kilometer," it's like, well, I just know from the outset that I wouldn't be able to get that, right? So you want to push yourself in a way where you can achieve it, but you must give it your best. But we always keep ourselves at a cap. We could do more, but for the sake of comfort, for the sake of our own pride, even sometimes, we keep it lower. And that's where we get complacent, because we think we're doing as good, we're doing our best, right? But when you set higher goals, it challenges you to push that. Another tip for overcoming complacency is gratitude. So, yeah, I think gratitude journaling is a very, very powerful habit. And I know it sounds like, oh, I'm gonna write in my diary how grateful I am, but I genuinely think it's so powerful, because even for me, I've implemented this in my life. Every morning I'll just write in my journal 3 things that I'm grateful for. It takes you 5 minutes, and even just yesterday when I was going for a run, obviously I'm about to go for a run. It's there is some emotional and physical suffering there. It's exhausting. But even before I was going for my run, I just, because I journaled, my automatic thought went to gratitude. So even though I was about to go for my run, I remember it was a sunny day, and I just literally looked at the sun, looked at the birds. I just smiled. And it wasn't some fake energy like, oh, I'm so grateful, and you're like that cringy positive energy that you got to muster up. It wasn't like that. It was genuinely, I just naturally thought that way, because I've trained my mind to think that way. And relating back to complacency, the reason why we get complacent is because we take the things closest to us for granted. Imagine in the example of that relationship, if you spent time even just telling her how grateful you are, or you're grateful for the habits that you are able to maintain even while you guys are in a relationship, even something like that, what it does is it keeps you from taking those things for granted. And obviously you can apply it to all areas of life. You're grateful for the progress you're making in your self-improvement journey, whatever it is, your family, fitness, again, whatever. If you take action on this and you do gratitude journal each morning, your automatic thoughts, just like mine were, will turn to gratitude, and you'll stop taking things for granted. And the third thing is, you have to keep challenging yourself. So this sort of relates to setting higher standards for yourself, but I think a specific thing is, when we get complacent, it is so important that we intentionally seek discomfort. We intentionally seek challenge. So for me, again, going for runs, doing my discipline routine each morning, those things keep me in check. Because I know that if I don't, so for the example of my run, right? If I don't get my sleep right, if I don't get my diet right, if I don't get my training time right, if I don't get these other disciplines in check, I know I'm going to suffer more when it comes to the run. My performance will decrease, and I'll have to put in a lot more effort, and I'll feel worse when I do it. So when you find yourself getting complacent, you have to intentionally seek discomfort. I know that's easier said than done, but that just comes from having a life revolved around discipline and just actively seeking discomfort. I don't need to over explain there, but that's going to have to be an intentional and purposeful thing you must do. Right? And so just a reflection question. Where are you getting complacent? And if you don't have an answer to that, if you think, I don't think I'm being complacent, you probably are. I think all of us are complacent in some area. I think it's quite unrealistic for you to say, I'm 100% focused in every area. Like for me, I would say that I'm quite grounded. Like I feel like I'm quite focused and disciplined. My routine's really in check at the moment. But even for me, I still face complacency every day, pretty much. Like it's a constant battle. And so I think it's a good thing to journal where are you being complacent? Because that self-awareness of you journaling it and thinking about it will help bring it into your conscious mind when you actually are becoming complacent. So if you said, I feel like I'm complacent in, I don't know, my diet, right? I get to the point where I just eat too much and I eat a little bit of junk food here and there. Next time you are faced with that situation where you are hungry and you feel like being complacent, it's like, oh man, come on, like I've been training for long enough, I've done my cardio, I've eaten clean for the rest of the day, I can just have this donut, right? By you journaling that, your mind will automatically, it will help you to remember more, so that when you are in that situation, you'll be able to have that self-awareness, and that self-awareness will lead to you being able to have better self-control. Okay, and another thing is, this is more of a future-facing version of that. But where could you get complacent in the future? It's funny because when we set a goal, we always think about the things that could go right. So if we want to, again, grow a good physique, a 10 out of 10 physique, we think of all the ways. It's like, oh man, I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to do this. I'm going to plan that, and I'm going to make sure I do this. But when do we ever think of where things could go wrong? So in the case with this complacency exercise, where am I likely to slack off? Because it's usually not a lack of ambition that stops you from getting your goals. It's because you get complacent in the journey. And so I would suggest writing this down, but where are you getting complacent? Or at least, where could you get complacent? Think about your past, like the type of person you are, and if you struggle with discipline and it comes to your diet, I could get complacent when it comes to me tracking my calories. I just feel like I might get lazy one day and just binge eat. Write that down. Because you, again, it's the same effect, but you having that self-awareness will help you. It's almost like a contingency plan for when you face that dilemma, right? When you face that situation where you could slack off. And so by doing this, by thinking of where things could go wrong, you are setting yourself up for success, because you're able to adapt when that situation comes. Versus if you don't, and the situation comes and you fall into complacency and you lose your momentum, right? And you know, once you lose momentum, it's very hard to get it back. All right, so take action on this. Another example that I think could help, but as I said, I've been training for 3.5 years now, and when I go to my gym, it's like a standard gym, but it's very easy to get complacent because I've got a pretty good physique. I'm consistent. I'm there all the time. You know, and I'm like, this is no offense to anyone else, but you know, everyone else around me is they're like sort of around my range. You know, like not the best physiques, but they're building, right? I kind of diss myself there, but yeah, as in like, then they're not 10 out of 10 level. That's what I meant to say, right? Then they got good physiques, but they're not 10 out of 10, right? And so around that environment, I think, oh, you know, like I'm pretty much like, you know, I'd say like, you know, I might even have a better physique than them, right? And so I think, oh, sweet, you know. But as soon as I step into a world gym, which is like, if you don't know world gym, basically it's this gym where there's like a lot of people are, basically everyone there is advanced. They're pretty serious about their weightlifting. A lot of them are on steroids, which is, again, I'm not, yeah, I'm not a big proponent of steroids, but yeah, so basically I go into that environment and all of them are serious about their training. They're all even further ahead of my journey. And so being in that environment, it subconsciously makes me compare myself. And obviously comparison can be toxic. But I think when it comes to complacency, comparing yourself can actually be a helpful tool, so long as you're not being insecure about it. Like you it's more like inspiration, right? You go from being the big fish in the small pond to the small fish in the big pond. And that's when you realize, oh damn, like I've actually got a lot more progress to make. So yeah, that will reset your hunger, right? So you can apply this to any area of your life. If you feel like you're being complacent, think about changing your environment. Speak to coaches who, you know, if it's for business, right? Speak to a mentor who is 10 years into the field that you are in and you're just starting out, right? Because doing that will motivate you to learn more. And so some action steps I had were, again, gratitude journaling. Journal what you're grateful for each morning. I think that will really help you to bring that sense of self-awareness. And not only that, I just think it's just such a good thing for your mental health. But secondly, seek bigger goals, set bigger goals, and seek challenge. Right? So raise your standards, set challenging goals, and work hard to achieve them. And finally, visualize. Just like that task that I said, think about ways where you could go wrong. Think about where along my journey I could get complacent. Think about ways in which you handle that when those times come. And when you do fall into a rut, and it happens to most of us, don't beat yourself up. right? So if you find like, oh man, what you're saying makes sense, Luke, but yeah, I fall into a rut. It's really hard. Again, bro, it happens to all of us. Just, I think the best advice is just set your alarm to 5 a.m., maybe 6 a.m., right? Just set an alarm where it's early and it gives your day that structure again. Even if you have to lose a bit of sleep for that one night, you just setting that alarm at 5 a.m. reinforced you, okay, I'm up at 5 a.m. I'm not going to like just scroll or do whatever. You know, like most people, they'll wake up at like 8 a.m. and then scroll, right? You won't do that if you set your alarm at 5 because you realize that, oh, like I'm serious now. And so I think that's a really good way to start building momentum. If you do fall into a rut, if you do find yourself get complacent, just do something like set your alarm to 5. I think that's a really practical step. All right, and so, yeah, don't get complacent. If you do, make sure you take action on what I said. But remember that comfort kills potential and progress lives in discomfort. All right. That's me, bro. Peace.